Chapter 6. Gone Too Soon.
I know that the past 2 weeks have been a roller coaster ride, for all of us. I just want to thank everyone in the homeroom class who contributed to the care package. I'll be going to deliver this to your classmates who were involved in the incident later this afternoon,
Miss Konami said as she looked out across her class. The students' faces had grown sullen, serious, but such was to be expected given everything that happened. Nearly 1/4 of the classroom disappeared in a day. Anyone would have a hard time coping with something like that. Miss Konami continued on, speaking to her students about valor in times of heartache and the importance of speaking about their emotions. The truth was, she hadn't even fully come to terms with her own feelings on the incident. It was something unexplainable, with no clear answers and only sorrow. Even for her, as a teacher, there was a degree of anxiety every time she thought about the faces of those students she would no longer see. Many of them she felt needed attitude adjustments. She couldn't count the number of times she wanted to lecture or strangle half of them, but all that seemed so pointless now. She finished her speech just as the bell rang, and she plastered on her best smile of comfort as she watched each student leave the classroom. There on her desk were 2 rather large gift baskets filled with various items: books, cards, candles, flowers, and fruits. Both filled to the brim, symbolizing condolences and well wishes from the classroom.
This might be a lot harder than I thought,
Miss Konami whispered to herself. There was no telling how long she stood at her podium, her thoughts carrying her away, but the voice of another teacher quickly pulled her back to reality. "Kaid, are you okay?" It was the voice of the teacher from 3B next door, Mr. Grimm.
Yes. Sorry, I was just spacing out a bit. I'm fine. Thanks, Jonathan.
I see.
Did you need something?
Miss Konami asked as she walked over towards her desk and put away her lesson planner. I was actually curious if you wanted some company. You know, for your visit to the hospital. Mr. Grimm mentioned as he closely scanned Kaid Konami for some sort of distress or repressed emotional trauma.
That's very thoughtful. Normally I'd take you up on that offer, but I've heard that both of my students have been exhibiting extreme trauma. The doctors have only allowed 1 person to visit, and only for a short while. It seems neither can really handle it.
Oh, wow. Mr. Grimm seemed genuinely concerned. Well, I'm here. You know, if you ever just want to talk. He nodded, lingering in the doorway for a few moments longer before departing.
Thanks, Jonathan,
Konami said softly as she stared down at the care baskets. It wasn't long before Miss Konami made it to the Gardenvale Hospital, where 2 of her students were currently being held. The car ride was short, but the time was enough for Kaid to steel herself for what she had to do. She needed answers. She needed to make sense of the situation, to understand why, and for that, she would need to push 2 broken youths. As with all things delicate, if too much pressure is applied, they tend to break. Miss Konami knew this, having suffered losses herself, but only these 2 students were present at the scene. With 3 of her students presumed dead or missing, 6 in the morgue, and only 2 survivors, she simply had to have a clearer understanding of what transpired. Miss Konami took a deep breath as she stood before the doors to the hospital, staring up at the 4-story building before her. The sky seemed strangely somber, as if nature itself moved to match the mood of the day. Internally, she was beginning to panic. Was this really right? Why would she, a teacher, be able to glean information that the law could not? Either way, she would have to deliver the class gifts, but she found herself desperately searching her logic for a reason to defy the flickering fire of anger within her heart.
These are my students. They are my responsibility. Why did something like this happen? Did I let a situation go too far that I should have reined in? I need to know.
Her motivations defied all logic, and so she steeled her heart and resolved to do what was necessary. Soon she was on the 4th floor, where both students were being kept. Miss Konami couldn't help but notice the twinge of pity and sadness on the nurse's face as Kaid mentioned which rooms she'd be visiting. Was it really that bad? Had Kaid not prepared herself properly for this? Either way, she was here, no turning back. As she came to room 403, Miss Konami found herself biting her own lip out of sheer nerves. The door was open, and from her position in the hallway, Konami could see the young girl in the bed, staring out of the window. There was a gentle breeze blowing, perhaps the only comforting thing about the visage. Linda looked so frail, so weak, as if she could float away on the wind. Her right arm was completely covered in cast. The treatment had even extended to her shoulder blade as well. Linda's normally vibrant skin was pale. Her blonde hair seemed to have taken on a grayish tint now that Miss Konami got a proper look at her.
Linda?
Miss Konami said softly as she walked just inside the doorway. For a time, Linda didn't seem to notice, but eventually she turned to face her teacher.
Miss Konami,
Linda said with a faint smile.
when did you get here?
She asked.
Oh, just now. It hasn't been long. May I sit with you for a while? I brought you some things.
Miss Konami added as she stepped into the room. She had no intention of being dismissed regardless of what Linda said, but the young girl made no protest. Miss Konami had no clue where to begin. She'd been in contact with a few friends who worked in the hospital. For the most part, she understood the state of both of her students to a degree, but seeing it was a whole different matter. It was as if Linda was a shell of her former self. It was here that Konami struggled to really breach the subject with her student. She had absolutely no way to ask what she wanted to know. Instead, she decided to test the waters. She began by showing Linda the items in the care package and reading cards from all of her classmates. It was here that Miss Konami was hit with a bit of unexpected truth.
They're such good people, even though I was rotten. And I treated most of them like shit.
Linda responded without a sign of emotion. Miss Konami could do little else but to agree. After all, it was no secret that Linda was indeed the queen bee, and the B did not stand for B. Still, since Linda seemed to be in an honest mood, Miss Konami saw it as her chance to venture further towards her goal.
Linda, as you may know, I was Ryuga's guardian while he lived here in Gardenvale.
At the mention of Ryuga's name, Miss Konami immediately felt the mood change, as if Linda had withdrawn into herself. Linda replied, her voice low and monotone.
I'm not angry at you. I understand how high school can be. I was young once. I get the group dynamics. I just need a better understanding of what happened that day, or what was going on between all of the students that could have caused...
Miss Konami grew quiet, desperately searching for the words, but none seemed to come. Instead, Linda began to speak.
Tarad, he liked Akira. But it was one-sided. He used to like me too. Really, Tarad likes every new girl. Or rather, he likes what he can get from them. And I suppose that made me a little jealous.
Linda said. Her gaze had returned to the open window.
So, Tarad roughed Ryuga up a little. He was supposed to be out of school for a few days, based on what they said, but he came to school the next day like nothing happened. That really pissed Tarad off.
I see. I mean, I was aware that Akira was interested in Ryuga, but was it mutual?
Linda was quiet for a few moments before she continued.
It's really funny. It's like, sometimes you don't really see the good parts of people until someone else takes notice. After Akira told me she thought Ryuga was interesting, something inside me, I just wanted to...
Tears began to run down Linda's cheeks.
I'm a terrible person, Miss Konami. I got what I deserved.
Linda said through her tears as she fought to wipe away the large round beads flowing down her cheek.
No, Linda. If there's anything I know, it's that growing up is hard, even for adults. Learning to manage your emotions is challenging.
It was here Miss Konami got to her feet and gently hugged the young girl, pulling Linda to her bosom as she did so. It was a few moments longer before Linda continued speaking.
So, we all went to the arcade. It was nice until Ryuga showed up. Then things just happened so fast. I don't know.
Yes, and that's the part I want to ask you about. But Linda, I really need to stress that I don't want you to feel like you have to say anything you don't feel comfortable with, no matter what happened, okay?
Linda nodded. Her flowing tears seemed to calm down a bit.
So, as much as you can, please tell me what happened.
Miss Konami said as she moved to the opposite side of Linda's hospital bed to better comfort her. What transpired next left Miss Konami with a range of emotions that she wasn't sure how to process. For a few moments, she felt the incredible story might be an elaborate lie. But as she searched Linda's face, Kaid quickly realized that was impossible. The thoughts, the words were all raw and unfiltered, as if a dam had finally broken within Linda. At times, Miss Konami found it difficult to breathe. Her eyes widened as Linda recounted her perception of the events. Finally, the young girl broke down sobbing once more as she completed her tale.
I'm so sorry.
Linda kept repeating through her heaving sobs, as if she had a hand directly in the carnage.
Linda.
Miss Konami's voice felt caught in her throat, tears in her eyes as she spoke.
It's okay. What happened wasn't your fault. It's okay. Shh.
Kaid repeated as she consoled the bawling teenager. It would be another 15 minutes of tears before Linda calmed down enough to speak again.
I tried to run. I thought that Ryuga was the one doing all those terrible things. But it wasn't him. Something attacked me. I don't know what it was. I couldn't really see it, but I felt it.
Linda's eyes seemed to glow out of focus as she remembered sustaining her injuries.
Hey, Linda, it's okay. That's enough. Thank you for telling me. You've been very brave. And just so you know, terrible people don't do what you just did. Being better is a choice we all have to make at some point in our lives. You've got your whole life ahead of you to turn things around, okay?
Miss Konami said as she patted the young girl on her cheek. It would be a few more minutes still before Linda settled down enough for Miss Konami to say her goodbyes. As she left the room, Miss Kaid looked back once more at her pupil. If it were possible, the girl seemed even smaller than before, like a wraith on the wind as she stared out into the distance at the setting sun.
My God, what happened?
Miss Konami mouthed to herself as she stepped into the hall, barely exiting the door before she began to buckle.
Sliced to pieces? Bitten? The police and news didn't say anything about this.
Miss Konami felt herself growing lightheaded as she set the other gift basket down and hurried towards the restroom. Miss Konami checked her watch as she gazed into the bathroom mirror. She'd washed all of her foundation off in a panic as she splashed water over her face to prevent nausea. The more she thought about Linda's tale, the more she realized it was true. The mass funeral, all closed caskets, the families and the depths of their grieving, the police presence ushering everyone away who got a little too close, even Linda's injury. But what could possibly cause an injury like that? A lion? Or bear?
But Linda said it was invisible. Maybe it was just too fast for her to see.
Miss Konami struggled to wrap her head around the story. There was really only one way to further confirm what Linda said is true. She would need to speak to Tarad. She dried her face as best she could, reapplied some light foundation and fixed her lipstick, then retrieved the care package and continued down the hall to room 418. Tarad's hospital room was all the way at the end of the hallway, and posted out front were two people. Upon closer inspection, they seemed to be law enforcement. Neither made a motion to stop her as she approached, but as she moved to open the door, she was halted.
"Excuse me, Miss Konami, is it?"
One of the young men guarding the door began. He motioned for her to step over to the side so they could speak.
"Hello, I'm Officer Mori. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about a couple of your students."
Hi, officer. Perhaps. Which students are you referring to?
Miss Konami inquired.
Well, as you know, there were 9 people involved in a high-profile incident. Of those 9, only 2 survived, but their stories are a bit...
I see. Well, they've been through a considerable amount of trauma.
Of course. It's not just that. We were hoping that maybe with your position as a teacher, you might be able to get your students to open up more easily than we or their parents could.
I see. And if that's possible, you'd like me to share that info with you?
Miss Konami replied. Her face was pleasant, but in the back of her mind, she could only imagine Linda's description of Benji's arm being severed.
Yes, exactly. We'd greatly appreciate your help on that matter. But truth be told, that's not the only reason I pulled you aside.
Officer Mori continued.
You see, Tarrant has developed a very extreme case of PTSD and possible schizophrenia. He believes that shadow creatures are lurking, coming for him at any time. Because of this, the only way to keep him calm is to have round-the-clock security.
That's... Miss Konami seemed at a loss for words.
It's extreme, but considering that he's one of the only living witnesses of what may have happened, we have to make every effort to accommodate his mental health. So when you go inside, please, be gentle. He's very excitable.
Kaid didn't know what to say. She was left speechless. Officer Mori patted her on the shoulder, then bowed as he gestured for her to enter. He nodded to his partner, who opened the door for her.
Taryn, your homeroom teacher, Miss Konami, is here to see you,
the other officer announced, then nodded for Konami to enter. As the door opened before her, she immediately noticed a stark contrast to Linda's room, which was open and well lit. Tarad's hospital room was completely dark. The normally thin curtains had been replaced with thick drapes designed to repel all light.
Miss Konami, hurry up and come in, before they follow you.
Tarad's voice came from the far corner of the room. It took a moment for Miss Konami's eyes to adjust to the dim environs, but then she noticed the boy huddled in a corner. Only a sliver of light pierced the window, and even that seemed too much for Tarad. The officers closed the door behind her, and for the first time, she realized that even the glass pane had been covered with construction paper.
Tarad?
Miss Konami said, suddenly feeling uneasy.
Shh, come closer.
Tarad whispered. What else could she do but obey in this instance? She walked as quietly as she could, setting the gift basket down at her feet before taking a seat next to the young boy on the floor. As she drew near, she realized that both Tarad's hands were set in a cast, dozens of small pins protruding from both.
Tarad, you should be in bed with those injuries,
Miss Konami whispered disapprovingly. Her nurturing instincts kicked in.
I can't touch the light. If I touch the light, it'll get me, just like it got everyone else,
he said.
But I like you. I have to save you. I couldn't save them. I couldn't do anything for them, but I can save you, Miss Konami.
Tarad, what happened to your hands?
Kaid asked, already knowing the answer from Linda's recounting of the incident.
Oh, this? It's nothing. Ryuga and I had a squabble. It's nothing.
Tarad seemed utterly unfazed, despite the fact that his hands had been completely crushed.
So, Ryuga did this to you?
Miss Konami continued, placing her hands gently against Tarad's.
Well, yes, but it was my fault. I started. But Ryuga, he saved me. He saved us.
He did? So you boys worked out your issues?
Yes, we had to. Otherwise, it would get us all.
Tarad's very childlike way of speaking suggested to Miss Konami that he might be mentally shielding himself from the truth. Still, she needed to know. She'd come this far. There was no turning back.
Tarad, tell me everything that happened, okay? Everything, and don't leave any details out.
Tarad nodded obediently, as he then pulled her closer and began to whisper to her, recounting his experiences during the incident.
At first, I thought it was Ryuga, but it wasn't. It was a dragon. It was attacking us one by one, but it was invisible. We couldn't see it. But Akira could. And then...
Tarad paused, seemingly remembering the fate of his slain classmates.
But Ryuga, he fought it. He hit it so hard it fell on its side. I thought it was dead, but it came back to life. And then I ran. I'm sorry. I left them.
Tarad whispered, tears in his eyes. Miss Konami's breathing had grown more heavy as she struggled to listen to Tarad's retelling of the story. For a moment, she forgot where she was and accidentally bumped the care basket with her foot.
What was that?
Tarad said with a start.
Shh. It's coming back for me. Just like it killed everybody else. I know it. Miss Konami, come here. I'll protect you. I swear I will this time.
Tarad grabbed his teacher and pulled her close, completely ignoring the pain searing through his shattered hands. The drive home was a long, quiet affair for Miss Konami. Seeing two people she'd known for years in such a state was too much for anyone. Bodies can heal given enough time, but wounds to the mind and the psyche may never truly recover. As she thought about what she'd heard and seen, she felt no closer to understanding the fate of her students. Dragons? Invisible creatures with razor-sharp claws? It was clear to her that both Linda and Tarad had seen something terrible. And what of Akira and Ryuga? The more she thought about it, the deeper the mystery became until finally Mrs. Konami decided to turn her car around. She was minutes from her home, but the swirling torrent of emotion prompted her to take a longer drive. Due to his Aunt Sumiko's wishes, Ryuga's gravesite was in the nearby town of Greenvale. It was here that Miss Konami found herself drawn as night fell. It wasn't long before she stood in front of Ryuga's grave, which sat next to that of his mother. As she stared down at it, she was filled with a wave of regret and sadness.
Why?
Miss Konami began, tears streaming down her face.
Why is it always you? Just when I thought you'd finally made a friend. Your father's dead. Your mother, too. You tried so hard to get by. I know you did. I noticed it. So why?
Miss Konami broke down as she sank to her knees, tears streaming from her eyes as she wept silently for a good long while.
Dear God, if there is such a thing, please let Ryuga have a measure of happiness, wherever he is.
Miss Konami prayed as she finally dried her eyes. She bowed her head to the trio of headstones once more, one for Ryuga, his mother, and his father. Finally, she made her way to her vehicle, a somber wind carrying away the last of her tears.